All right, let's divide some complex numbers. Now, when I say complex numbers, I don't mean they're difficult or challenging or tough. I just mean that's a real number, an imaginary number combined together. It's no different than an apartment complex, right? An apartment complex is a building and a building joined together. So what we have is a real number, an imaginary number combined together to make what we call a complex number. A real number, an imaginary number, put together to make a complex number. So how do we divide them? Okay, what we would have to do is multiply by 1. We need to change some things around over here so we can start working with them. We're going to multiply by 1, but we're not just going to put 1 down as a 1. We need to write it out as a fraction, and specifically we need to write it out using the conjugate of the denominator. Okay, the denominator down here, negative 6 minus 7i, the conjugate of that is just negative 6 plus 7i. Remember, the conjugate is just opposite sign. Okay, so if it says minus, your conjugate's going to say plus. If it said plus, your conjugate would have said minus. Now, to make this just equal to 1, we just put the exact same values up on top, because this divided by this, you divide something by itself, what does it always equal? 1, you betcha. So now that we've done that, all we have to do now is use the FOIL method. We all know that the FOIL method is taking the first term, multiplying it by the first term in the second. Our outside terms, outside, then our inside terms, then our last terms. So we're going to follow those easy steps. We're going to take first times first, outside times outside, inside times inside, last times last. Then we'll write down our simplified expression down below. So negative 25 times a negative 6, a negative and a negative multiply together to make a positive. 25 times 6 would be 150. Now I'm going to take negative 25 times positive immediately, because it's a negative times a positive. I like to put the negative down. Now, negative 25 times positive 7i, that's going to be 175i. Already took care of my negative. Negative 15 times negative 6. A negative 15 times a negative 6. Well, negative times a negative makes a positive, right? And then 15 times 6, well, 15, 30, 60, 90. With an I. Because this had an I, this did not. Now we get to this last one, negative 15i times positive 7i. Negative 15i times positive 7i. They both have an I. So now we're going to be squared. Negative times a positive is a negative. 15 times 7 is 105. I squared. I times I would make I squared. This is important because this is where this comes into play. All right, we simplified everything on top as much as we could in our first step. We still got like terms. We're going to combine those here in just a bit, but let's get this bottom figured out. This is where the conjugate plays its role, right? It's kind of cool. I know I'm a nerd for this, but I watch this happen and it's awesome stuff, right? We're going to take negative 6 times negative 6. Well, negative times negative is a positive. Now we got a positive 36. A negative 6 times a positive, so negative result. 6 and 7 are going to give me 42. And don't forget that there's an I right there, so we need to put that in that term. Now we got to do our insides. That's negative 7i times negative 6. A negative and a negative make a positive. Check this out. That had an I, that did not, so we just got one I. Look at that. Negative 42i, positive 42i. What's about to happen? They're going to cancel, right? That's why we multiply by the conjugate, so these two can go away, all right? And then last but not least, first, outside, inside, last. Now we're multiplying our last terms. Negative 7i times positive 7i makes negative 49i squared. Ooh, there we go. Both of those are squared because both of the last, you were multiplying I times i's. Okay. Now, one thing we need to know about I is that it's equal to the square root of negative 1, which we all know the square root of negative 1 is this imaginary value, right? You can't multiply two things together and get two of the same thing together and get a negative result. So, what we need to understand is this. If you were to square I, remember I is the same as this. If you were to square it, that'd be like squaring this. And what does an exponent of 2 do to a square root? Well, they cancel one another, leaving you at just negative 1. So I squared is negative 1. Okay? Anytime you see I squared, you can just change it to a -1. So if I have -105 times I squared is really just a -1. So this is like saying, if I were to just put a box around this section, this is like saying -105 times I squared, which is just -1 times -1. So what that does is it changes it from a negative into a positive. So all you got to do with your I squared parts is this. You remove the I squared and you change that to the opposite sign. Remove the I squared, change that to the opposite sign. Hey, things are starting to clean up for us a little bit. We're almost done with this. Thank you for sticking along with me. All right, I got like terms up here on top, -175i plus 90i. Well, that would give me 150 to start, a negative. I got more in the negative, so we're gonna be right there. Looks like 85i, 105 on the end. We'll be able to combine those like terms in just a second. 36 minus 42i plus 42i, those cancel one another. And then you got 36 plus 49. 36 plus 49. All right, let's combine 150 and 105. That's going to give you 255 minus 85i minus 85i. 36 combines together with 49 to make 85. I like what I'm seeing right now because I know those will simplify. I got two terms on top. It's still a complex number, right? Real number, imaginary number. So what we're going to do is split this. We're going to say 255 over 85 minus 85i over 85. The 85s will cancel, leaving you just I. 255 divided by 85 is just 3. So 3 minus I would be your final result after dividing this complex number. Okay, let's break it down. Multiply by the conjugate of the denominator, written as a value of 1. Because you did that, these two terms are going to eliminate, which then allows you to simplify, combine your like terms, and make it all the way through the problem. Thank you so much for sticking to it. Please let me know if you have any questions. Leave a comment. If you want a different problem done for you, just shoot me a message. I'll make sure to put a video up for you. Thank you. Study hard and good luck on your upcoming test.